Where's Larry? Larry disappeared.
Larry late again.
There he is right there.
Really? We'll get started with that now. Okay. Good evening. I welcome you to the regular Town Council of Town of Sunnyvale, regular meeting for January 28th. Thank you for being here tonight and participating in this event. At this time, I'm going to request Mayor Pro Tem Jim Wade to lead the invocation.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for the opportunity tonight to meet, to go about the business of this town. And Father, we pray your blessings upon us, the actions that we take. We also ask for your wisdom and guidance as we make decisions. Father, we thank those who are in the audience tonight. We pray for their participation and thank you for their involvement. Father, we pray for our community. Thank you for what you've given us the opportunity and ability to live in this wonderful town. And bless it tonight as cold weather sets in, that our residents be taken care of. Father, we also remember our first responders who will act tonight as necessary. We pray for their safety. And Father, as we do that, we remember tonight the 5 officers in Houston which were shot this afternoon, and the events that are going on in that town tonight. We remember them, their families, and in fact that law enforcement community now as they go about the business of taking care of these officers. Father, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and go about the business. It's in your name I pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in standing as we pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this time, let me call to order the meeting for January 28th. Time is 7:01 p.m. For the record, Councilmember Allen, Finch, Wade, Egan, and George are present. Mr. Mcneil is out of town. Did I say Clark? I meant to say Clark. I'm sorry. Councilmember Clark is out of town. We have quorum. So this time it's the time for public forum. Citizens may speak on matters other than personal or matters under litigation. So if anyone would like to come forward and talk to the council, you may do so. I want to take a moment to welcome, not formally, we will have the formal introduction in February, Susan Guthrie. Susan, we want to welcome you to Town of Sunnyvale. Susan is going to be our new town manager, and her official start date is February 4th. So on the February 11th, I believe, that 11th is, we will formally introduce and welcome Susan. Again, glad to have you here.
Welcome.
If no one else is coming forward, I'm going to close the public forum. And moving on to the consent agenda items. Council, we have 5 consent agenda items. First one is department monthly reports, December 2018. Minutes of special town council meeting for September 10, 2018. Is that the corrected one, Rachel? Where did she go? Was the September 10 is the corrected one? Yes. Okay. Minutes of special town council meeting for September 24th, 2018. Minutes of special town council meeting for October 8, 2018. Minutes of special town council meeting for October 22nd, 2018. So I'm going to pull number 2 and present to you 1, 3, 4, and 5 for approval. Are there any discussions or anyone would like to pull any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, can I have a motion to approve 1, 3, 4, and 5?
Mayor, I make a motion to approve items 1, 3, 4, and 5 of the consent agenda.
Motion made by Mr. Egan,
Second.
second by Finch to approve consent agenda items 1, 3, 4, and 5. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed. Motion passed 5-0. The council has requested a minor correction to the minutes of special town council meeting September 10th. I think they had Mayor Pro Tem's Wade's and my name swapped, and I believe Rachel made the correction, so that's the only change in the minutes. Anyone has any discussions on that one? If not, can I have a motion to approve minutes of special town council meeting for September 10th with the change stated?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Egan,
Second.
second by Finch to approve minutes of special town council meeting for September 2018 with the minor correction stated. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 5-0. Moving on to the discussion and action items. Economic Development Director Tracy, please come forward. Item number 6, discuss and consider 4A Development Corporation Resolution 19-05 supporting the continuation of Chapter 312 tax abatement for economic development.
Good evening,
Good afternoon, Ms.
Mayor and
Anderson.
Council. Just to kind of give you a little update, for Chapter 312s, they expire this year, and so they're going before the legislature to possibly amend it, get rid of it, keep it. So what we've done with 4A and 4B both, and it kind of goes hand in hand with items number 6 and 7 on the agenda, is both 4A and 4B at their January meetings passed a resolution to send to our state representative, Mrs. Bowers, to tell her about our support for wanting to keep Chapter 312 in the legislature. Several of our surrounding communities have done the same thing, so we just wanted to also show our support for the town to be able to still provide Chapter 312 tax abatements. And to give you an example, this new construction of the expansion of Lineage, that was what we did, was a Chapter 312 for their tax abatement. Happy to answer any questions. This is kind of more just kind of a blessing, showing that council is supporting this as well, so just kind of blessing our resolutions that were passed.
Council questions for Ms. Anderson? If not, can I have a motion to approve the resolution 19-05 as presented?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Egan.
Second.
Second by Finch to approve resolution 1905 as presented. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 6-0. Moving on to item number 7. Is that also that's 1904? Okay.
Correct. Yes, sir.
That is to discuss and consider 4B Development Corporation Resolution 19-04 supporting the continuation of Chapter 312 tax abatement for economic development. Ms. Anderson?
And this is the exact same thing as item number 6, just for the resolution for 4B.
Okay. Any questions for staff? If not, can I have a motion to approve Resolution 19-04? That's the 4B Development Corporation's resolution supporting the continuation of Chapter 312 tax abatement for economic development.
Ditto, so moved.
Motion made by Mr. Egan. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Allen to approve Resolution 19-04. Any additional discussions? Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 5-0. Motion passed 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and
5-0.
Council.
Item number 8, update on projects including Downtown Vision Committee, Rails to Trails, Glazier Tract, incentive guidelines, and strategic plan. Ms. Anderson?
Mayor and Council, there have been several questions just asking kind of an update on where we are on several projects that I'm working on. One of them being the Downtown Vision Committee, and just to remind everybody of the committee members, we have Nikki Anthony with 4B, Terry Shatter with the Chamber, K. Paul Cash with 4A, Larry Allen as the council member, and Leslie and myself as staff members. Our first meeting was held January 17th, and during that meeting, we spent about an hour and a half just discussing different ideas of what everybody saw as the vision, what areas, what boundaries did we see. We looked at what the current TC, overlay district is, so our town center overlay district, and determined that we kind of think that we could fit a downtown within our current town center overlay district and keeping those boundaries.
Okay.
We've looked at the ideas of what would we see down there? Would you see housing? Would you not see housing? Would you see retail, breweries? What all do you see in that regard? What does that look like? So what we did was we are taking the next meeting, which is going to be this Thursday, January 31st, and looking at our codes, looking at our land use chart to see what's even allowed within the downtown district, to see what the standards are in that town center district, and do we still like those things? Are there things that we want to add? We kind of briefly looked over the land use chart, and there were some things that we think that we could use that aren't currently acceptable now. So just kind of looking at all those things, still trying to figure out what our vision is, and please jump in anytime, Mr. Allen. And then just taking it from there and seeing where we want to move forward after kind of how long will it take to create that vision, something that we feel comfortable with coming back to council and the board, kind of giving our overall vision before we bring in the additional stakeholders.
So, Tracy, a couple of questions. One, can you put together a schedule? That way, how long is going to be this meeting, how many meetings, and what is the next step, sort of kind of when you come back, even now, put a schedule, how long would it take? Again, thanks for serving on the committee, by the way. Some sort of schedule, how many meetings you plan to have? 4 meetings, 5 meetings, 1 meeting?
I don't know that we have a good answer for that,
Okay, that's fine.
but
Just
probably a
think
few
about
more
it.
meetings to have
Okay.
a rounded thought process
Okay.
that's shareable, so other people can interject and make changes and amendments or suggestions or however we go
So
with that.
what, we know what will the output look like? Is there going to be a bunch of PowerPoint charts with thoughts, or any idea yet?
I don't think we progressed to that point
Okay.
to where there's something you can put on paper, but I think we're probably pretty close, and
That's impressive.
close in thought process.
Okay.
That's not close in finality. I do think that one of the things that I suggested to Tracy as well as to the other members is a process that we had seen recently through some other towns, is if we consider hiring somebody that actually
Yeah.
takes a final look of everybody
Yeah.
and then molds that into something that can develop it professionally. So that'll cost some money.
Yeah.
And I think that my understanding from Tracy was that the direction is we'll bring that back to the council or to you, and then we'll process from there. But we need a good working knowledge of what collectively the town wants, and that may require a little bit more input at some point. But at least we can draw something on paper that looks like this committee says, hey, this looks like a good starting point from several different perspectives, and then we can expound from there.
The citizens' input is going to be with the consultant, I'm assuming, or that's going to be?
I think that's to be on the table. One of the suggestions that some of the consultants that I have kind of dialogued with is that would be part of their consultant fee, that they would, if we retain one of those particular consultants, they would set it up with town.
Yeah.
They would come in and have certain times and dates where people could come in and articulate to them what they would like to see, and then he will try to capture that with whatever the vision is that we have and try to start formulating something that looks like, hey, this is what the committee, the citizens, and now the council would like to see, and go from there.
So these questions came up from the property owners, like maybe a couple of them, right? Those who own property in this town center overlay. Will this committee meet with them, or that's going to be a phase which
So-
include they being part of the larger committee? How do you
Let me
envision
back up
it?
a little bit. We haven't decided to hire a consultant or move
Okay.
forward with a consultant. That is just one idea that was
Sure.
brought to the table, that if we have this vision and taking that and planning it out and looking at it further to figure out, okay, do we need 5 acres? Do we need 20 acres? What does that look like? Because if you're putting different downtowns into perspective versus, we think there's maybe about 20 acres of potential use on the other side of the highway to look at our downtown. So in that, if you take Forney's downtown is about 5 acres. So what does that look like over across the street? And then we want to be able to take something and create this vision to bring before the council and board, just to kind of look, because we really want to get our partners involved, the property owners,
Yes.
other downtown developments that are
Yes.
going on, and being able to take that and look at that and kind of all work together. Can we work with our partners to develop it? Do we buy it and develop it? These are all questions that are up in the air that, we don't have answers to. And I mean, rightfully so, it was just one meeting. So,
Right.
I mean, taking that and evolving it. But the committee, I think, is pretty proactive in wanting to meet maybe every couple of weeks.
Okay.
That's the one trend we have right now. We met once and a couple weeks later we're meeting. So maybe if we meet every couple of weeks, we can figure out in the next couple of months what that looks like, something visually appealing. So we want to put it all together, maybe put it in a PowerPoint. Larry showed some great downtown pictures and photos, and taking those that others have submitted and putting it into a PowerPoint to say, look, this is what we collectively are deciding on, or we think the downtown would look good at, based on hundreds of pictures, narrowing it down to a few and kind of pinpointing something specific.
Okay. This is one of the strategic items, and so thank you, every one of you, for serving in it. This is a very important day for
Yeah,
us.
let me give you one more input to it, just kind of perspective to add to what Tracy said. One of the members suggested this, and I actually thought this was very small until I went out and started going to look through some of these towns. But if you take an area that's about 500 by 500 feet, then that's really pretty big. It's about the same size as Forney, as you referenced. So if you can kind of grasp 500 feet, it doesn't have to be 500 feet, maybe more or less, depending on what the town agrees to. It's obviously a lot smaller than what I had envisioned when we first started talking. So I think, what's affordable, what's working, and what can happen in the long term. I think the question that at least I have on the committee is, at what point do you want us to stop and bring it to you, the mayor, so you can say, hey, let's take it to the council here. I'm not sure what that process looks like. At some point, we need to take it back to you, I think. And I think that's really what I'd like to know from you. Where do you want us to get to, and then to that point go to?
Again, personally, I'm just going to suggest that you guys have a couple of meetings, maybe 2 or 3 meetings, and sort of kind of narrow down to something more defined, right? And again, I'm loosely saying defined, right? That's because we got smart people in the group. Try to then come back to it. Something we can chew on it, right?
Good.
If we make it as vague as 500 options, there's really not much we can make a decision, right?
Right.
Something we can choose from may be better.
Okay.
And I would assume that you will have a consultant or somebody who knows more details about it, something we should consider engaging at some point of time.
Mayor, if I could comment here.
Yes, sir.
And you guys have heard me say this before. The task that we've given this committee is, in my opinion, an uber difficult task, because they're starting with a blank sheet of paper. Downtown Forney has buildings that have been there for a long time. We don't have anything. And that's what makes it complex, because the question that you just asked, or the point that was just made about the size of it, is it going to be 5 acres or 10 acres or what? We've got a blank piece of paper because we got some land over there to work with. We don't have it, but the land's available. We don't have any structures to start working with. It doesn't exist. And I think the team that has been put together is an excellent team for being able to do this. It's just, it's really going to be a back and forth. I think Tracy hit on one of the good points to begin with, and that's looking at what our town center overlay allowables are and what the non-allowables are, and work with that, so at least we can get a vision of what's going to be acceptable in there. And then we can begin to downscale it or upscale it based on how much buy-in that we can possibly get from the surrounding landowners. I think one thought that I was just having is the smaller that we make it initially, if we've done our planning right, we've done our homework right, the other people that are in the surrounding land areas are going to want to be a part of it. And it's not as much of an investment if we end up having to buy that 5 acres or 2 acres, whatever it might be. It's not as much of an investment by the town. We can leverage what we do if we do it right. We can leverage what we do to get the other people to get actively involved with it. But again, the major point, I've always seen this, and I've said it time and time again, we're starting with a blank piece of paper. and we can show, and I'm sorry I'm forgetting the name, we can show the town in California that burnt to the ground, we can be their focal point as to how to make this happen again. Fortunately, they've got foundations there, so they might be able to build up from that. We've just got dirt. But I just wanted to make that point. You guys, I know, are going to have a difficult time, but I appreciate all the people that are on the team, because I think that you can get there. You've got a bunch of good people on there.
Thanks. Council, I want to ask, Mr. Allen had a question. Mr. Wade and Mr. Finch, do you have any thoughts or comments for Mr. Allen and the committee? What would you like to see back from the downtown committee?
I think we have to have some clarification of exactly what it is we want to see, because I hear the word downtown, and I know what that means to me, but have been more focused on a Main Street concept, which is different than downtown. And, so I don't know exactly which it is that we're looking at, and at one meeting, you don't have that decided yet. So I think there's some more work to do, but on clarification of that's going to come out at some point. A downtown to me is a little different than a Main Street, and I'm looking at Collins Road, which is going to be improved all the way from 80 to, let's say, the school, and that gives us the opportunity to take that corridor and turn it into something anchored nicely by the highway and the other end by the school. And Larry, as we've talked before, individually, even to the point of acquisition of properties becomes very important. Without going into detail right now, that becomes very important to that concept of what we can do using Collins Road as the interior Main Street.
And to respond to that, I think, Jim, I actually agree that there's a possibility that both of those can exist. The question is, how do they look? And, during my recent vacation, I had an opportunity to go through some different towns and look, and in my mind, initially, it was a square. In reality, very few of these are a square. They have some sort of road, T, all kinds of variables. So I don't think that we have to lock ourselves in, nor should we, Mark, as you mentioned, to lock ourselves into a specific design. We should be as flexible and as innovative as we can so that we consider multiple possibilities, because most of these towns that we see popping up are probably 70 or 80 years or older, and so I think there's flexibility to have a Main Street anchored by a downtown, and that may not look like the square that I originally thought. It may look like a square, an L, a T, and all of the things we talked about. So I think you're right, it is a blank sheet of paper. I think I'm actually intrigued by all of that. My vision is this big, and my dollars are probably going to be this big. So how do we scale that back, and how will that be satisfactory to everybody that's going to participate, and at what level? I think that is a challenge, but I think we can get there and probably meet the needs of everybody, not just what I think, but what each of us think, so that at the end of the day, we have a piece of a pie that everybody wants to participate in. And I think that all of those are possibilities. We just have to, I think we should keep an open mind and consider the Main Street, consider the downtown, consider the land, consider all of those. I think it's doable. I think it's exciting too, what it could be.
And I think what's real important in that is that if you can meet every 2 weeks. In fact, I think it'd almost be better if you can meet every week. There's a lot of work that's got to get done. But at least the thought process has gone to at least every 2 weeks. And I think that's good. You'll lose a lot of train of thought in the 1 month period in between. That makes good connection. Now, maybe later on it goes into 1 month things as this plan begins to formulate. But I think that's a good idea that you've thrown that into the mix as well.
Any thoughts, Mr. Finch?
Support the process, look forward to the outcome.
Tracy, back to you, sir, ma'am.
I just want to make one notation that, just for in general, we are talking about the east side of Collins, not one particular person's property or anything like that, but a bunch of properties collective as a whole. So I just think that's important to notate. The other project that we've been working on is the Rails to Trails project. At our last strategic planning session, council said, move forward. We support just kind of seeing where it is and what we need to do. So council member Clark and Eric Weiss had met with Luminant, and they felt that they made good progress in being able to talk about gaining control of the rail line. In doing that, we do not have a specific answer from Luminant on whether we will have to buy it. They'll grant us access, what that gaining control yet means. They said that they would give us an answer within 30 days, so we still have about 3 weeks left to figure out what that answer is. We had a conference call this morning with the North Central Texas COG to find out where we are on the application process, when the deadlines are. There's a couple of different grants we can apply for. We cannot apply for both of them. So we're weighing what our options are to be able to apply for one over the other. So once we figure that out, we'll see where we go. One's deadline is March 1st. The other one is not probably until April, but we've got a meeting set for February 20th to figure out when that state deadline is. The COGS deadline is the March 1st one. So we're going to plan to apply for the March 1st deadline, but we're going to attend the February 20th meeting to see if maybe that would be a better option. So we're still kind of up in the air on what that is. At our next council meeting, I would like, if okay with council, to bring forth a resolution to just show support of the project. What is being asked from the grant application process is just getting any letters of support that you can. What they recommended was the council, the school board, as well as Dallas County. So I'd like to bring that before council at the next meeting, and then we're also going to talk to the school board and Dallas County about doing the same thing. The Glazier Tract. Oh, does anybody have any questions on Rails to Trails? The Glazier Tract, just a reminder, Nikki Anthony and Michael Giordano of 4B, Mayor Pro Tem Jim Wade and Kara Ranto with council are a part of that committee. The kickoff meeting with David Mccaskill was held this last Friday. We spoke with the David Mccaskill group in Bonterra about what items we would like to see on the property. When you drill down, would you like to see a tack shop or a little riding place, all different kinds of things that may be included in an equestrian type stables. In that, we also brought up the idea that others had maybe mentioned, what else could potentially be on this property. We brought up the idea of ball fields, parks, and some other options, and it all kind of went back to this same equestrian-based site and what was there based on the traffic, lights, and other items with some of the other amenities that they were looking at. So the consultants felt that it was better to go down this route as well. With that being said, if we were to go down a different route and we were to look at something different, then we'd have to go back through the RFQ process, because this is what they were required to do, was the equestrian side. And I think we've talked about that before, just reiterating that. What our next steps are, let's see, our time frame and next steps. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to tour other facilities that Bonterra is putting us in touch with, kind of that resembles a lot of what we talked about. So we're going to tour facilities by the end of February. We determined that we should probably host a town hall meeting to get citizen input in the process. So after we tour the facilities, and we will host a town hall meeting probably mid to late March, and then they'll put together a preliminary presentation of what this master plan would potentially look like. And at that point, we would bring it to council and 4B board as a joint meeting to kind of go over what their presentation is. At that point in time, council and 4B can provide feedback on what the plan looks like so that they can go back and essentially put together the full final master plan, which they're hoping to complete end of April, early May. So that is where.
Quick question, Tracy. So we don't really have any type of document or anything back from them. We just had a kickoff meeting to start the process to prepare their proposal for us. Is that right?
To start preparing the plan. This was just kind of initial, this is what we got out of the RFQ process. Is this still where we sit, what we want to do, what we want to look at? So it was just kind of everybody getting on the same page and make sure we were moving in the right direction.
So just so I'm clear, we don't have any type of official documentation back
No,
from them on anything?
No,
It's just,
sir.
we're just starting a process. Okay, thank you.
And feel free to add anything, Mr. Wade, if the. Okay. There's been ask about the incentive guidelines and strategic plan. I am planning on having both those items on the next board meetings to, one, the incentive guideline, I don't expect for them to approve it at that meeting, just kind of go through and provide any feedback that they see with the document. And then the strategic plan, I'm hoping to bring forward for an approval and then bring it to council for official approval and adoption as well. Sunnyvale Day at the Capitol, we have sent out a flyer to the local boards and council to sign up for Sunny Day at the Capitol. Right now, it's just gone to council and the local boards, and then once we give a couple weeks to let people sign up, we'll send it out to the general public. We have a maximum of 50 people that can attend the event, because in looking for charter buses to rent, we were having a hard time already finding charter buses for that specific date. So we'll send that out as well. What we hope to get out of this event is just building relationships with our representatives and let them know we're here and how we can help and support them as well. And then finding if there's any feedback from council on items that y'all would like to see discussed down in Austin, we can do that. I know one request has been for somebody to talk about grants and how we can apply for grants or what grants are out there. So we're working on a speaker for grant funding. And I know Terry Shatter was working on a Texas Ranger to come speak during our lunch. And this will be an all-day event, so I've heard from most of you, but if you haven't, please RSVP because we need to have those in order to attend. The joint workshop with council and the EDC boards, I wanted to kind of propose a different meeting. Originally, we talked that the February 4th, it was set up to have kind of a joint meeting. We pushed that back a little bit, maybe to March, April timeframe. After going through the Glazier and downtown committees, what I'd like to propose is a joint meeting with the boards after 4B and 4A kind of get a little further along with the downtown committee as well as the Glazier Tract. So once the Glazier Tract comes, then we have to hold a joint meeting with 4B and the council. At that point in time, I'd rather do that in, early to mid-April, and looking at dates at that point in time, maybe in March, set a date in April, so that we don't end up with a bunch of joint meetings and that we have to have more. So if it's okay with y'all, I'd like to just set that date whenever we get that, and then we can do it like we did before with 4A in the beginning. We can talk about downtown, and then 4B afterwards, and we can talk about the Glazier Tract and Rails to Trails further for where we are at that point.
Didn't we, in the last meeting, ask for that to be taken off, at least renegotiated some of those dates? It seems like I remember that we talked about that.
Yeah,
We basically, I think we just kind of tabled the agenda more than it was anything. We didn't set anything fixed with it. And
Correct.
just discussed that it would be, there's some determinations that need to be made, primarily driven by the downtown committee. So it was a still flexible date.
You're going to bring it back next council?
The Economic Development 101 training, if you'll remember during the strategic planning session that council had, one of the action goal items that came out of that was to enhance the board's, commission's relationships and trainings. And under those trainings, it was the Appreciation Dinner, Open Meetings Act, and then the Economic Development Training and Overview for EDC and council, with a time frame under there is the summer of 2019. So that's why the Economic Development 101 came up, and setting a date of June 19th. What I hope to get out of that is just learning more about economic development as a whole, looking at what the eligible activities are, best practices, trends, and it's kind of a broad overview of what the sales tax workshop is, taking that and enhancing it a little bit more. So if you've ever sat through the sales tax training, then it's just eligible projects, what we can and can't spend our money on, best practices. So I'm really hoping that that'll be beneficial for the boards and council. So if you have any questions on those, I'm more than happy to answer.
Any questions?
That is all I have.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 8, town engineer portion of the agenda. To receive an update on the preliminary list of capital improvement projects that are proposed for a potential bond election. Mr. Jenkins, how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I had been tasked back in December with coordinating with other town departments, putting together a list of preliminary wish list, if you will, of capital improvement projects that various departments have identified that they need to meet the town's needs moving forward over what I would anticipate to be probably within the next 10 to 15 years, period. We identified a total of roughly $93 million worth of various projects. The large majority of that is related to drainage, water and sewer, roadway. Then Parks has about $25 million, and the balance being improvements to fire department, library, and animal control facilities. Again, this is a very preliminary list at this time. We're still exploring avenues as to how we're going to fund all this and what the time frame is that we're really looking at. My next anticipated step in this process is to start soliciting applications from the citizens and to get a formal committee put together to try to parse this out a little bit more, try to come up with more of a detailed time frame as to how long it's going to take to get all this done, how we're going to fund it, and basically sort of make this into a roadmap and move forward and then present it for approval at that time. But as I said, this is what's been identified at this point. So I would just like to ask if y'all would like to discuss any of these particular items, provide any information I can.
So like town never had a capital improvement projects committee, right? This is the first time we will be,
That's my understanding,
Okay.
sir, yes.
and I'm sure with the new town manager coming on board, she may have some inputs, I'm pretty sure about it. Council, what are your thoughts?
I don't know what your definition of capital improvement committee is. I think we've had something of that nature because every time we do the impact fee study, we have to have capital improvement program. So I think we've had some. We may not have had a committee. Actually, it was a committee because I was on that one time.
Was it a citizens committee or just a council? I'm just trying to remember it.
Citizens committee.
Okay. How
So
long ago was that?
It was 5 or 6 people. It's been a while because Paul Cash was on there, I was on there.
Okay, so it's
So
been a while.
yeah.
Okay, gotcha,
So,
gotcha.
but I think we've had that.
Okay. I was thinking
I'm
about.
not opposed to that at all, but I'm wondering how long it'll take to come up with the priority list and so forth from folks who are just looking at these things for the first time as opposed to those who've been engaged in them for some period of time at a council level. Some of these time is of the essence, in my opinion.
Certain things are,
Several of them need to get moving pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
got to fly to the top,
and-
yeah.
And could be funded out of the budget and reserves, in my opinion.
In my experience, I haven't necessarily dealt with citizens on that committee. I've dealt with like planning and zoning commission members, people who are in the development industry. Typically someone, when you're talking about a citizen, you're talking about an actual home builder, and when you're talking about impact fees. That's the last time we did something like that in 2015.
Way longer than that.
Go ahead, Mr. Finch.
So, I would just say that, obviously, that's a very large number, and that, I think you're right, Jim. I think we probably need to decide with our new town manager's wisdom, hopefully he can guide us through this process as well as figuring out what we can pay for out of funds or whatever we have existing, and then what we need to go through on a capital improvement, actual bond program. But I would say that I believe that the Citizens Committee is going to be key for us in not, I think it serves twofold. One, helping us vet the projects, and two, at some point, we're going to have public support, right, in making this thing happen. Especially we have to go for a large bond, which is what I see us heading towards. And just from a previous experience, working on a couple of school bonds, it does take time, but it is paid off. And so I understand there's a balance, right? And so I'm not sure what it is on timing, but I'm telling you that, and I know you know this, I'm not speaking to you, I'm just speaking in general about having citizen involvement in this will be key for us, I think, for the success of anything we put forward. And I think through the process of education, we know, we can talk about it because we know kind of the issues and the pressing issues, but again, it's part of that process of helping our citizenry understand you know, when you see water, sewer, and you see whatever, $25 million for what that is, if we don't educate our people, then I think we're remiss on, we're losing an opportunity, I think, to help them see what we see. That's just my general comments on the committee aspect.
Council, additional thoughts? Council, I'm going to share my thoughts. Obviously, many of them are very important projects. Again, I agree with you, Mr. Finch, that we got to get the citizens involved for the buy-in and as well as the, getting their ideas. But personally, I think I'm good with the idea of moving forward and start the process of finding the right citizens committee, at least get the idea out there for people to show interest and want to participate in this work. But I really like our new town manager to take a look at it and work with your team, and that way I know what the list staff came up with is probably accurate. There's no doubt in my mind. But we have one more set of eyes and who has experience looking at it. So my thought is that we bring it back maybe in a month or so here. Maybe, I don't know, that's too soon for you or not, I'm not sure. At least to get our new town manager's thoughts and inputs. Again, I'm not always saying that we should slow down the citizens' involvement or even start that process of getting some of the news out there, seeking volunteers, type of things. Mr. Wade?
Yeah, I didn't mean for those comments to be interpreted as we didn't want citizen involvement. I believe the citizen involvement is very crucial to the execution of a bond election. I have concerns about what the process would be in selection of the CIP projects and how much time would be taken trying to prioritize and list those projects, especially when you have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 plus. So I guess I'm surprised at the drainage subtotal. It's only 5 million. I was expecting a much larger number. Of course, some of the others I would question is, why are they so expensive? So I can't do that. I'm not the engineer, the architect, or any of those such people. But I agree that new town manager should provide some input on this. But I'm going to be very frank. We have to do something about drainage now. We cannot continue to allow our water to flood our neighbors' homes. We've caused that issue, and it needs to be fixed. And we spent over a year paying money for a drainage study. Now we need to put some of that drainage study into action. Not wait another year while we try to figure out what's a priority and who's going to serve on a committee and how we're going to figure it out, and then go for a bond election. We could be 2 years down the pike and we hadn't done a thing to cure any drainage issues. Now, some of this is less than $1 million. I don't know how effective it'll be, but it's at least a show of effort to try to fix something which is pretty obvious in my opinion. That's, again, our water that's flooding properties. They may have a drainage easement, but our water is being forced on them. And when I say our water, it's the water coming out of developments that we approved without perhaps proper engineering to be sure that it was not going to create problems downstream. So I think that some of this needs to be examined really quick. Some funds need to be made available to handle some of at least the drainage issues. Certainly there's other projects on here that need attention, and we not going to call those out tonight. So I'm questioning some of the dollars based on the information we've received in the past. So I'm hoping that I can see this council and our new town manager look to some of these issues that are causing our residents immense problems.
Mr. Finch?
So just for my education, because I don't know, what I don't know, how would we go about funding some of these things if we say I know some of it we can fund through cash reserves. How would we propose to fund some of this stuff that we don't have the cash for?
You're referring to drainage
Right.
specifically?
If we decided to attack drainage right now,
Okay, let us go back and look, because if you'll remember a meeting or two ago, Lyle had prioritized some of those drainage issues. So let us go back and see what we can do and get you some funding options and have those for you at the next meeting.
but I guess in general, I'm not asking for something specific. Let's just take one. It's $3,865,000. We decided that's what we were going to do. What are our funding options?
Let me turn to Ms. Hopkins for a second. Have comments?
On the drainage issues, I think you're going to have two funding options. One of them is going to be, as Councilmember Wade said, reserves, because we do have some excess operating days. And I also took a look at the way our debt is structured right now, and we're paying our debt off pretty quickly. We have about $8 million in current principal debt, and we're paying that off. And it'll all be paid off in 2037. So we do have capacity to add some more debt. I think from what I'm looking at, my analysis, we could probably get $5 million worth of projects and we'll raise the INS rate in the first year. Excuse me. We'll raise that INS rate in the first year, but because we're paying down debt, we're paying down $8 million, and then we're going to go back and borrow $5 million. So it really shouldn't have, in my opinion, a negative effect to our taxpayers, maybe that first year. But after that, I think we can structure it to where we bring some things online gradually. Do $5 million, let some time pass, get those things going. This is kind of what I put together. You can see there. Currently we have, like I said, the $8,830,000. Current INS rate is 0.073755. And this is how that principal is paying down. So it will get to zero in 2037. And that's if you did no additional borrowing. And then this slide is the effect of borrowing $5 million. And as you can see, it assumes no growth to the taxable value, which is very conservative because we're going to have some growth. But I wanted to be extremely conservative. It assumes a 20-year term. So your INS rate would increase 0.0261 in 2020. And that would be that first year. Go ahead. That first year, this is what your...
Is that a peak out there?
Yeah, that's where your $91.50 in that first year, 2020, on a house valued at $350,000. So that first year, 2020, your taxpayer with a $350,000 taxable value would see an increase in their taxes if you left the M&O rate alone of $91.50. And then down at the bottom, it may be too small to see, but you can see the dollar amounts I put across there all the way through to 2039. And then this is the data that I use in the assumptions. I always try to provide that. Did I answer the question asked, Councilman Finch?
Yes, thank you. Very well, thank you. Appreciate it. You were prepared.
Or at least somebody asked her, right?
And Liz, these were no growth estimates, which is, we know is not going to be the factor. So that's in our favor.
And I do have growth expectations that First Southwest did for us, and they're showing a 9% growth next year in our taxable
What
values.
percentage?
9%. And with not knowing what the legislature's going to do, if they back off on that 8% and move it to 4%, or if you know, that they don't come in at 9%. So I just thought, let's go with no growth. Let's just leave the valuations where they are. So we can only improve from there, and assuming interest rates don't start rising quickly.
So that's what you're saying is, that if you do we can borrow $5 million without too significant of an impact, tax rate, but if you choose to borrow more money, then there'll be tax rate impact.
I also did an analysis if we borrowed $10 million. I did not bring that with me. I
Okay.
can provide that to you.
Okay.
But again, I think where we go into it with, we're not going to borrow it all at one time. And so I think that's the importance of choosing those projects.
Prioritize.
As Councilmember Wade said, what do we really, really need to do? What is just really, really critical? And we can do that $5 million, in my opinion, not have too much of an effect on our taxpayers. We could probably, if we structured it correctly, could maybe take that $91.50, fund it in with our reserves. So I think there's a combination of things we can do. And then when we get to the next $5 million worth of projects, or whatever that number starts to be, we just have to say, when are we going to bring those online? When are we going to, start hitting the sewer lines, and the roads?
Right.
So we have to structure it.
Right. Additional possible funding is Dallas County contributions, if you take into
Right.
account, and possible grant money. Those are all that may increase our total amount of projects we can do without negatively impacting the tax rate.
And the grant money, as Tracy was saying, there's opportunity out there.
Right.
But it sometimes is a moving target on you. So those things that you think that you can use grant money for, those are, for lack of a better word, the fun stuff. So, because you might get the grant, you might not get the grant, but if you need your drainage fixed, you need your drainage fixed.
Okay.
You don't want to wait for a grant for that type of project, in my opinion.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from the council so far is, correct me if I'm wrong, is the staff go back and take a look at it and get, Susan also get a chance to look at it and work with the staff and come back in a month or so here. Mr.
Just want to add
Yes,
that
sir.
while drainage is certainly, in my opinion, their number one project, we can't forget the fact that we're going to finish Collins Phase
Yep.
1 probably within 2 years.
Yep.
And unless we do Collins Phase 2,
Yep.
we're going to have a terrible projected
Yep.
traffic impact at this intersection out here. So we've got to figure out that next, what's listed here is $7.5 million, because that needs to be probably ready to start
Yep.
as soon as Phase 1 is complete, if not sooner. I mean, if it's taken us, as you know, in excess of 3 years, and we hadn't even turned dirt yet, if it takes us that long on Phase 2, then we will have a bottleneck for 3+ years, which will not be favorable to the town nor our residents. So that needs to go pretty quickly, because we're not moving very quickly on any of it.
Mr. Finch?
So one other comment for clarification, Lyle, if you can help me out with this. So I see our water sewer amounts here, and from our last rate increase, I thought I remembered that we plugged in some CIP projects into that rate, right? And so, and I guess my question is, how does that play into our overall, and maybe this is Liz too, how does this play into, if we're saying we're gonna fund it out of our water sewer rates, do we just take those out, take this number out and say this is gonna be funded by a separate fund? Or how does that work?
What I would need to do is, and I've started to do that, is try to match up what Lyle has here with those assumptions we made during that water rate study, because it should be paying for what was described as the M Street sewer line replacement, and I believe it came to about $6 million. And then the water rate study also took into account the DWU transition. So Lyle and I need to sit down and make sure that he has those projects, that the projects he has that you and I are thinking were covered with that rate study actually were. And that's Lyle and I's next step, is to have that column next to these projects that says funding source. And that's where you're going to see either bond, impact fees, utility fund water rates. So that's where Lyle and I will have to work on getting the funding source. He's trying to get priority at this point, and then we can go in and start putting a funding together.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me, because I really can't decide on this until I know, like, I know we have some priorities, but I'm at a loss on how we're going to pay for some of this stuff, and I think for me, that puts kind of the pieces together when I see, okay, this is funded out of water, this is funded out of CO bonds or whatever we decide to do, and then this is funded, this is what we're going to have to go to the citizenry for to say we're going to have to increase your rates. And I guess going back to the committee, I see the committee playing the role more in, I know we had the big picture, but a citizen committee looking at, okay, if we decide there are certain aspects that we're going to have to go back to the citizenry and say, here's our number that is going to impact your tax base. That's where we have to really be careful and have the citizen involvement. Some of these other things that we've already dealt with, like with the water and sewer and things like that, I think we've already dealt with that, and that's, I guess it helps me categorize these buckets, so to say, of these different projects. And I'm learning on the flyer, so forgive me, but it helps me put these things in buckets and understand them. So I appreciate y'all's work and humoring me.
I do, and correct me if I'm wrong, for this old Mesquite Country farm boy. Basically what this is this is what it's going to cost, but we don't have what the potential credits are that would go against this, is kind of how I look at it. And a lot of good work. I mean,
Thank you.
it takes a while to put the whole thing together, and you're up against the time frame of meeting up with us. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the credits go, because I was worried with all the drainage it being the $5 million, almost $6 million. But then I look at the first two items, drainage, and that's $600,000. And I would think that we could find $600,000 somewhere. Not to play favorites, but at least that gets one of the more vocal areas going. And then, Liz, your analysis that says the $5 million is not free, but it's there. We can get there without having a major impact to the citizens of the town. And then again, item B, the water and sewer, again, we have to analyze that against what we just did in the wastewater and water study, because that, again, it's the enterprise fund. So, and how much of that is done right now and how much of it is delayed out. So just thanks, guys, for thinking through it, and hopefully I was right in kind of my analysis of the way this thing looks.
Additional comments on this one? So council, do you want to move forward with asking for volunteers for the capital improvement project, or you want to wait for next month or two to get the list narrowed down before we go?
Mayor, I'd like to see it worked with our new our new town manager, but not a month or two. I think the month or two turns into 6 months to 8 months, a year. So, we sort of identified the drainage that we need to attack. And maybe we separate that from the rest of these projects, so we have several projects going at the same time. It seems like I hear everybody saying, hey, that's a priority. But again, I think we need to allow the town manager to take a look at this with an expedited focus on the drainage, and then prioritizing the rest of these, and then stepping into, as Councilman Finch mentioned, a citizens group that can help us prioritize this, because at some point they're going to have to pay for this in a bond, and I think they need to buy in to say, hey, what is our money going to go to, and have some input into that, because it's going to be an impact. I think the $43 million pact the school bond did that I chaired was I cannot remember the exact amount, but $43 million was a couple $100 per household, even though the school did a good job, and we've not felt that impact increase yet. It was about, I think it was almost $300 a year. So when we're talking about $43 million at $300, we're $50 million in the hole somewhere, unless we're willing to pay $600. And maybe we are, but I think we need to prioritize that. But I think we have two projects going on. The drainage, I'd like to see the the town manager have a short time to take a look at that and tell us where to go, and then kind of move forward.
Okay?
Mayor, I think also we need to be focused with this. I agree with what Member Allen just said and what Member Finch has said. But I think we also need to be focused as to what projects we would want the Citizens Committee to look at. Because if not, we might get somebody who comes in and says, well, what about the water that's going behind my house? And his house isn't anywhere near this. Everybody's got problems with water going across their yards. I've got problems with water going across my yard, but you don't hear me complaining about it.
Mark, just a quick interjection.
Yeah.
I think that my suggestion was we pull the drainage out, so that takes out that part of the issue.
But, well, and I think that's right, but I think in anything that we put together to put before the group, I think it needs to be defined, or you're going to get people throwing things in there that, unless, it's not that we don't want to hear that of an issue that we might not have yet recognized, but we have to be careful, or we're going to end up with a bunch more projects on this, whether it's drainage or a water line or a sewer line or a merry-go-round or whatever it might be. People are going to start throwing these things in, and I just think it needs to be a focused thing. The people can still speak. I mean, we still listen to them, but I think when it gets to this committee level and we've got to start moving on these projects, we don't need to spend a lot of time saying, having a 30-minute discussion about something that's not on the list, because that wastes the time of the committee at that period of time. And it's just trying to focus the list to the things that really need to get done that have been determined by, hopefully, through our saying yes, because we're the elected people that have to speak to the citizens, and the citizens elect us, but also through their opportunities to provide input to what this list is tonight. And I don't see very many people here being able to do that. So I was just trying to make that.
I promise they will when we put a bond out in front of them.
Oh, no argument about that?
Council, additional discussions on this one? Okay, if not, Lyle, again, thank you so much for pulling this together. Liz, you'll be a major player in this one, I know for sure. Let's give a new town manager and Leslie and Liz and Lyle to get together and put their brains together and come up with additional details and something we can chew on. Okay?
Right.
So
Thank
we
you, sir.
hope to see this in, hopefully in the next February council agenda, maybe second meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Very nice.
Susan, as you could see, we have started loading you up already, right? Council, moving on to the town secretary portion of the agenda. That is to discuss and consider the acceptance of council member Mcneil's resignation, which was tendered on January 11, 2019. Mr. Ramsey?
Mayor and council, as you all know, Councilmember Mcneil tendered his resignation on January the 11th, and that was effective immediately. With this resignation, the town council will call a special election to fill his vacancy. Councilmember Place 6 for an unexpired term of 2 years.
So Rachel, the action for this is we make a motion that we accept his resignation. Is that the motion?
That's correct.
Okay. Council, can I have a motion?
Mayor, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
If we don't accept it, do we send Mayor, or do we send Sergeant Evans out to go get him for every Monday's meeting?
He's willing to do that. Okay, can I have a motion to accept Councilmember McNeil's resignation?
Mayor, I make the motion that we accept Councilmember McNeil's resignation effective immediately on January 11th as written in his letter.
Motion made by Mr. Allen, second by Ms. Regan to accept the resignation of Councilmember McNeil's resignation effective January 11, 2019. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 5-0. Moving on to item number 11, that is to discuss and consider first reading of an ordinance ordering a general election to be held in said town at the next uniform election date on the 4th day of May 2019 for the purpose of electing a mayor and 2 council members, place 1 and 2, designating the date for a runoff election if needed, designating the place at which the said election is to be held, making provisions for the conduct of that election and other provisions incident and relating to the purpose of this ordinance, providing a severability clause and providing an effective date. Ms. Ramsey?
Mayor and council, each year the town council is required to order your general election. This year's election is scheduled for Saturday, May the 4th, 2019, with early voting being held April 22nd through April 30th. The charter provides that in order to be elected, a candidate must receive more than 50% of the votes cast. If a candidate fails to receive more than 50% of the votes cast, we must hold a runoff election. The attached ordinance orders the 2019 general election and runoff election if necessary. Staff anticipates the contract with Dallas County Elections Department will be ready for council review sometime in the end of March.
Council, any discussions on this agenda item? So that was the first reading, so we will bring it back in 2 weeks for approval? Okay. Council, moving on to item number 12, that is to discuss and consider first reading of an ordinance of the town of Sunnyvale, Texas, ordering a special election to be held in said town at the next uniform election date of the 4th day of May 2019 for the purpose of electing one council member, place 6, designating the date for a runoff election if needed, designating the place at which said election is to be held, making provisions for the conduct of that election and other provisions in incident and relating to the purpose of this ordinance, providing a severability clause and providing an effective date. Ms. Ramsey?
Mayor and council, this is a special election since it's an unexpired term for Councilmember Mcneil's place. This will order that special election to fill his vacancy, again, for an unexpired term of 2 years. The filing period for this position cannot open until the council has ordered the election according to the election code. As a result, the filing period for place 6 will begin on February the 12th. That's when you'll order the election on February the 11th. The filing period will open on February 12th and will extend through March the 4th.
Council, discussions or questions on this one? Again, this is the first reading of the ordinance, so this will be back on the agenda in 2 weeks. Moving on to item number 13, that is to discuss and consider first reading of an ordinance of the town of Sunnyvale, Texas, ordering a special election to consider proposed amendments to the home rule charter of the town of Sunnyvale at the next uniform municipal election date on the 4th day of May 2019, designating the place at which said election is to be held, making provisions for the conduct of the election and other provisions incident and relating to the purpose of this ordinance, providing a severability clause and providing an effective date. Ms. Ramsey?
Mayor and council, this is also a special election for the propositions that were presented to you at the last council meeting. The only change would be that to the proposition number 1, the wording.
Council, discussions on this agenda item.
Last comment that she made regarding Proposition 1.
The only change that was made from when David Pascal presented it to you was the wording that y'all requested.
That's based on the comment we made.
Right.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So another question, Rachel, you referred to these as regular election and then a special election and a special election. Does that mean 3 different ballots? Does that mean 3 different sign-ins? Does that mean 3 different rooms?
No, it'll be all one election and it will be on the same ballot.
Okay.
But they're just considered special
Okay,
because
so
it's
it-
unexpired and it's special
So it's
because.
just still one ballot that people have to deal with? Okay.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
I
Rusty.
like that idea.
yes.
What did you say?
The voter will never know the difference.
Okay, again, council, this is the first reading, so this will be back on the agenda in the next council. Good timing. Only 28 minutes behind, but that's okay. Item number 14, that's the mayor and council request for future staff updates and agenda items. If no one has any items,
Soja, I do.
yes, Mr. Egan.
I'd like an update on the status of our hydrant preventive maintenance program. I know we got real excited there for a while, and Johnny was doing a lot of work on the hydrants, particularly the older ones. But I was thinking, and I'm sure, I'm assuming staff did it, I just want to be sure that's a pretty important thing that needs to happen, otherwise we don't need to be getting into those weeds.
Yeah.
But because it happened the way it happened, I think it's important that council be informed as to, yeah, we have put a program together and this is an ongoing thing. Again, if our Public Works crew needs more people in order to support that type of effort, then let's find out who those people are and let's get them on board. We don't need to have another stuck fire hydrant. But I would like that update.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Anyone else? Okay, if not, can I have a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D of the Texas Government Code? That means we have one agenda item, that is the Section 551087, Economic Development, to discuss Project Tenant and Project Bearer.
Mayor, motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Motion made by Mr. Allen, second by Egan to adjourn into the executive session. At this time, now time is 8:10. We are adjourning into executive session. Probably not. This is economic development. I think you'll be okay. You want us to bombard you? Hey, can I still go get Chris? Huh? Can I still go get Chris? Chris? Oh, yeah.
different. And then, 3 or 4 years ago, we went out there, and we like it so much, it's kind of become a regular thing. So we go once a year, and we'll go. Oh, wow, it's so good. It is good. And everything could just go in the summertime, and you could see it's pretty too. Yeah. Because years ago, I went out there with group of women for lunch, and it was pretty colors, you know, and it's always dark when we go in. Yeah. Oh, do you know if, he and Tim made any decisions on, the project on here? Because it wasn't, I looked online, and I
Never in a hurry.
You missed that
Efficient.
7:45, yeah.
Efficient.
He's been pushing us, so I can consider racehorses.
Approved.
So who is behind now?
It's usually not too bad. It's my man.
Now, council, now it's 8:33. Let me adjourn the executive session and reconvene into the regular town council session for January 28th. Council, from the discussions, can I have a motion to approve the performance agreement by and between Sunnyvale Hospitality LLC, a Texas limited liability company, and the Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation, and to execute the contract and authorize our Economic Development Director, Tracy Anderson, to sign the performance agreement. Motion made by Mr. Egan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Finch to approve the performance agreement between Sunnyvale Hospitality LLC and 4B, and to sign the contract by Tracy. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 5-0. Council have a motion to approve the performance agreement between Sunnyvale Hospitality LLC and Sunnyvale Foreign Development Corporation, and to sign the contract by Tracy Anderson.
So moved.
Motion by Egan, second by Finch to approve the performance agreement by and between Sunnyvale Hospitality and Sunnyvale Foreign Development Corporation. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 5-0. Now time is 8:34, so at this time I'm going to adjourn the regular town council session for January 28th. Good night.